You know what really gets under my skin? When hardworking Americans who've been driving safely for 40, 50, even 60 years suddenly find themselves trapped in a maze of new government regulations they didn't see coming. And folks, that's exactly what's happening right now at DMV offices across this country. 3 significant rule changes just rolled out. And if you're over 65, you need to hear this before you walk into that DMV unprepared. I'm talking about changes that could affect your license renewal, your driving privileges, and yes, even your wallet. And here's the thing that really bothers me. Most people won't hear about these changes until they're sitting in that DMV office, frustrated and confused. Look, I've spent decades helping people navigate financial decisions and government bureaucracy, and I can tell you this: knowledge is power. These aren't small tweaks to the system. We're looking at mandatory vision screenings with stricter standards, new in-person requirements that eliminate mail-in renewals for certain age groups, and medical certification rules that could blindside you if you're not ready. So let's cut through the noise and talk about what's really happening, what it means for your independence, and most importantly, what you can do about it right now. Now, let me be crystal clear about something before we dive into these 3 rules. The government didn't wake up one morning and decide to make your life harder just for fun. These changes are coming from somewhere, and understanding the why behind these rules is just as important as knowing what they are. See, over the past 5 years, statistics from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration have shown a concerning trend in accident rates among older drivers, particularly those over 75. I'm not saying older drivers are bad drivers. Far from it. Most of you have forgotten more about safe driving than these young folks texting behind the wheel will ever know. But the data shows that age-related vision decline, slower reaction times, and certain medical conditions are contributing factors in specific types of accidents. So, state legislators across the country started responding, and that response is what we're dealing with today. The first major rule change we need to talk about is the vision screening requirement, and this one's got teeth. Now, I know what you're thinking. We've always had vision tests at the DMV. You walk up, look into that machine, read some numbers, and you're done. But here's what's different now. 23 states have implemented what they're calling enhanced vision screening protocols, specifically for drivers 65 and older. Instead of that basic eye chart test, you're now looking at a comprehensive evaluation that measures not just your visual acuity, that's how clearly you see, but also your peripheral vision, your depth perception, and something called contrast sensitivity. That last one is huge because it measures your ability to distinguish objects from their background, especially in low light conditions. Think about driving at dusk or in the rain. If you can't clearly see that pedestrian stepping off the curb because they're wearing dark clothes against a dark background, that's a contrast sensitivity issue. Here's where it gets real practical for you. These enhanced screenings are more stringent than what you've experienced before. The old standard was 20/40 vision in at least one eye. Most states are sticking with that baseline, but now they're adding these additional measurements on top of it. And if you fail any component of this enhanced screening, you're not walking out with a renewed license that day. Instead, you'll receive what's called a conditional approval, which means you've got 30 to 90 days, depending on your state, to visit a licensed optometrist or ophthalmologist, get a complete eye examination, and have that doctor submit a medical vision report directly to the DMV. Now, this isn't the end of the world, but it does mean extra time, extra appointments, and yes, extra money out of your pocket because Medicare doesn't always cover vision exams that are required for licensing purposes rather than medical necessity. Let me tell you what this means for your planning. If your license is coming up for renewal in the next 6 months, don't wait until the last minute. Get yourself to an eye doctor now. Have them run a comprehensive exam, and ask them specifically about your peripheral vision and contrast sensitivity. If there are issues, it's better to know now and address them with corrective lenses or treatment rather than finding out at the DMV counter when you're under pressure and on a deadline. I've talked to folks who showed up to renew their license thinking it would take 20 minutes and walked out 2 hours later without a license and with a stack of paperwork to complete. Don't let that be you. The second rule change is hitting people even harder, and it's all about in-person requirements. For decades, many states offered mail-in renewal or online renewal options for drivers who met certain criteria. It was convenient, it was easy, and it saved everyone time. Well, those days are disappearing fast for drivers over 65. 18 states have now mandated that anyone 65 or older must appear in person for every license renewal with no exceptions for online or mail-in options. And it gets more specific. In 12 of those states, the in-person requirement kicks in at age 70. But once you hit 75, you're looking at renewal cycles that shift from every 8 years or every 6 years down to every 4 years or even every 2 years. Let's break down why this matters to your day-to-day life. First, there's the time commitment. Anyone who's been to the DMV knows it's not a quick trip. You're looking at potentially 2 to 3 hours between waiting in line, completing paperwork, taking your tests, and getting your new photo taken. For some of you, that DMV office isn't around the corner. You might be driving 30, 40, even 50 miles to get to your nearest location. Now, multiply that by the fact that you're doing this every 2 to 4 years instead of every 8. Second, there is the preparation involved. You can't just show up anymore. Most states now require you to bring multiple forms of identification. Your current license, proof of residency, like a utility bill or bank statement dated within the last 90 days, your social security card or a W-2 form, and in some cases, even your birth certificate or passport. I've heard stories of people making that long drive to the DMV only to be turned away because they brought a cell phone bill as proof of residency, but that particular DMV office only accepts paper utility bills or bank statements. It's maddening, but it's the reality we're dealing with. Now, here's something most people don't realize about these in-person requirements. They're not just about checking boxes on a form. During your in-person renewal, DMV employees are now trained to conduct what's called an informal assessment of your physical and cognitive capability. They're watching how you walk from the entrance to the counter. They're noting whether you're confused by basic questions or instructions. They're observing whether you can read and comprehend the forms you're filling out. If anything raises a red flag, they have the authority to require additional testing beyond the standard written and vision tests. This could mean a road test, even if you haven't taken one in 40 years. It could mean a referral to your doctor for medical clearance. And in some cases, it could mean a mandatory driver improvement course before your license is issued. I'm not telling you this to scare you. I'm telling you this because forewarned is forearmed. When you go to the DMV, be prepared. Bring all your documents in a folder organized and ready. Answer questions clearly and confidently. Take your time with the paperwork. There's no prize for finishing first. And if you have any mobility issues, use your cane or walker without embarrassment. It's better for them to see you moving safely with assistance than struggling without it and raising concerns about your overall fitness to drive. The third rule change is the one that's causing the most confusion and, frankly, the most anxiety, and that's the medical certification requirement. 14 states have now implemented rules requiring drivers over a certain age, usually 70 or 75, to submit medical clearance from their physician as part of the license renewal process. This isn't just a note from your doctor saying you're healthy. We're talking about a specific state-issued form that your doctor must complete, addressing detailed questions about your physical condition, your medications, any diagnosis that could affect your driving ability, and their professional opinion on whether you're medically fit to operate a vehicle. Here's what makes this complicated. Your doctor isn't just signing off on whether you're generally healthy. They're being asked to evaluate specific conditions that the state has identified as potential driving risks. We're talking about diabetes, especially if you're on insulin and at risk for hypoglycemic episodes. We're talking about cardiovascular conditions, particularly if you've had a heart attack, stroke, or have uncontrolled high blood pressure. We're talking about seizure disorders, sleep apnea, any form of dementia or cognitive decline, and medications that cause drowsiness or affect reaction time. Your doctor is putting their professional license on the line when they sign that form. So they're not going to just rubber stamp it to be nice. If they have legitimate concerns about your ability to drive safely, they're ethically and legally obligated to note those concerns on the form. Now, this creates a difficult situation for a lot of folks. Maybe you've been managing your diabetes well for 20 years, but you had one low blood sugar episode 6 months ago. Your doctor might note that on the form, which could trigger a requirement for more frequent license renewals or restrictions on when and where you can drive. Maybe you're taking medication for anxiety or pain management, and even though it doesn't affect your driving, it's on the list of medications that require additional review. Suddenly, your straightforward license renewal has turned into a bureaucratic maze of additional paperwork, possible DMV hearings, and restrictions you never anticipated. Let me give you some practical advice on navigating this medical certification requirement. First, schedule an appointment with your primary care physician specifically for this purpose. Don't try to squeeze it in at the end of your annual physical. You want dedicated time to discuss the form and address any concerns. Second, be completely honest with your doctor about your driving habits and any incidents you've had, even minor ones. If you've noticed you're having trouble seeing street signs at night or you've had a couple of close calls in parking lots, tell them. Your doctor can't help you stay safe if they don't have the full picture. Third, if your doctor expresses concerns about your driving, don't get defensive. Get curious. Ask them specifically what worries them and what steps you could take to address those concerns. Maybe it's adjusting your medication timing. Maybe it's getting your vision rechecked. Maybe it's limiting your driving to daytime hours or familiar routes. There are often solutions that don't involve giving up your license entirely. Here's something else you need to understand about all three of these rule changes. They're not uniform across the country. We live in a federal system where each state sets its own licensing requirements within certain federal guidelines. That means the specific details of what I'm describing vary significantly depending on where you live. California's rules are different from Florida's, which are different from Texas, which are different from New York. Some states have implemented all three of these changes. Some have implemented one or two. A handful of states haven't implemented any of them yet. But the trend is clear. More states are moving in this direction every year. So what do you do with all this information? First, you need to find out exactly what rules apply in your specific state. Don't rely on what your neighbor told you or what you heard at the senior center. Go directly to your state's DMV website or call their information line and ask specifically about renewal requirements for your age group. Get it in writing if possible, or at least write down who you talk to and when. Second, start preparing now, not when your license is about to expire. If you need medical forms, request them early. If you need to schedule a vision exam or a doctor's appointment, do it with plenty of time to spare. Third, organize all your documentation in one place. Your identification documents, proof of residency, medical records, everything you might need. Use a folder or envelope labeled specifically for your license renewal. So when the time comes, you're not scrambling to find your social security card or a recent utility bill. Now, I know some of you are feeling frustrated right now. You've been driving safely for decades. You've never had a serious accident. You maintain your vehicle. You follow the rules. And now the government is putting you through additional hoops just because of your age. I get it. That frustration is valid. But here's the perspective I want you to consider. These rules, as inconvenient as they are, exist because driving is a tremendous responsibility. You're operating a multi-tonne vehicle at high speeds in close proximity to other people. The consequences of a mistake aren't just property damage. They can be life-altering or life-ending for you and for others on the road. The goal of these rules isn't to take away your independence. It's to ensure that everyone on the road, including you, is as safe as possible. And here's the truth that nobody wants to say out loud, but needs to be said. For some people, these additional screenings and requirements will reveal that it's time to have a serious conversation about driving limitations or alternatives. That's not a failure. That's wisdom. That's putting safety above ego. I've seen too many situations where someone who shouldn't have been driving anymore caused an accident that hurt themselves or someone else, and the guilt and legal consequences that followed were devastating. If these new rules help identify concerning situations before tragedy strikes, then as much of a hassle as they are, they're serving an important purpose. Your license is a privilege, not a right. And part of that privilege is the responsibility to ensure you're capable of exercising it safely. These new DMV rules are changing the landscape of how that capability is assessed for drivers 65 and older. And being informed and prepared is your best strategy for navigating these changes successfully while maintaining your independence and safety on the road.